Hey, party people. So we've got another video today, first one in a while, um, second one overall. So we are moving on up. The premise of this video is to build on some things I've been promoting very softly, I guess, um, through the literature and in some communications I've had with practitioners that I have a relationship with. And that is the premise of using system momentum as a metric that helps you determine training loads, but also the applicability of certain exercises as it relates to transferring to a key task that you want to improve. So what I'm going to do is show some data here. It's just a case study just to demonstrate my rationale or my point, but it's looking to identify back squat efficacy for improving the counter movement jump performance. And we're going to look at this from a velocity approach because I think a lot of practitioners are using that velocity based approach, but then also a momentum based approach, which is what I'm kind of leaning into nowadays. So what I'm going to do is open up this figure here that on the left side has uh, total body velocity, so center of mass velocity, across movement time for a counter movement jump in the blue line, a low intensity back squat in the red line, orange line, if you want to think of it that way. And in that golden kind of line is a heavier squat. Now, light squat is determined in this data set as RPE based. So rating of perceived exertion, and it is an RPE 4. The heavy squat is also RPE based, but it is an RPE of 8. So depending on your feelings about RPE based intensities and whatever, but the whole point is demonstrating low load versus higher load relative to its applicability to stimulate or potential to stimulate counter movement jump adaptations. Movement time here is from 0%, that is the initiation of motion. So you've completed standing still and we're starting the task. 100% for the counter movement jump is takeoff, and for the other tasks, it is the end of upward motion. Now, the reason I'm using the counter movement jump and heavy squatting is because I think if I were to poll researchers and practitioners and say, if you perform back squat exercise, will you stimulate counter movement jump improvements? And I think the majority of people will say yes. But I have had conversations with some who say their experience working with athletes would say no, not always, and um, not really having an answer why, because the general consensus is yes, this is the king of all exercises, right? So let's look into this. And if we start on this first graph, which I said was velocity versus the movement time, with the counter movement jump in blue, if you take a velocity based training approach, the objective is to achieve a velocity, whether it's a downward or an upward velocity, that is within a certain threshold of the target task you want to improve. So, for example, you may pick eccentric or downward velocity, and you want to train at a load that will get you to this load minus 10%, for example. So, like a 10% loss. So, you train at the heaviest load that will help you achieve that 10% or less loss. Well, you can see here from these data, neither the heavy nor light loads will achieve that for you. And my hypothesis here would be that I would have to make these loads so light that you're essentially performing unloaded counter movement jumps in order to achieve that velocity. On the upward, if you're thinking concentric or positive velocity creation, they still don't hold a candle to the velocity that you achieve in this jump. We're here getting to about, what, 3 3/4 meters per second. And these are hovering right around 1 meter per second. So we're way below. And so from a velocity-based approach, you're going to have to perform squat style exercises at such light loads that it's not going to be very useful, especially as it relates to how practitioners would look at squatting in their own practice for why it would stimulate a jump improvement. So why would it, or why wouldn't it? So let's take this to the momentum approach. So here on the right side, we still have counter movement jump in blue. This is the momentum of the system. So the mass of the athlete plus the load, if there is a load, multiplied by the velocity. And orange line again is light load, RPE 4, and yellow line, gold line is RPE 8. Now what you can see here is that if we go with the light load, it's not creating nearly, right? We're getting to like threefold less downward momentum. So it's not having very much of a downward, or dare I say, eccentric stimulus to this athlete. Even so, the spend 80% of that movement in downward or eccentric time, which, you think transfer to an exercise, you don't want to be going eccentrically for 80% of the movement task. You want those to be, quicker transitions. Now, moving it to concentrically, not holding a candle to how much momentum gets created in a counter movement jump. Now, if we were to keep in this concentric area, you look at the heavy squat and you'd say, well, during a certain period of time, where this looks like between 60 and 80%, it's creating more momentum, right? So that early upward time period, right, it is creating more momentum and then it fades off. What we also see is this heavier squat is getting right up to very close to the downward momentum of the counter movement jump. It's also having it occur, that peak downward momentum, much sooner in its task. So this is telling me that a heavier squat will stimulate eccentric qualities. How much momentum you can create moving downward, and the rate at which that momentum can be created. And that stimulus is driving an eccentric focused adaptation. Now, the point being for a counter movement jump is that what you do in the eccentric should have a knock-on effect to the concentric. That's why everyone loves eccentric rate of force development, braking rate of force development, braking force. All of that stuff is because it sets a foundation for improved concentric output. So this heavier squat is doing a better job of creating a stimulus that should carry over to that eccentric, setting the stage for concentric output. Now, why would this explain? Now that backtracking, that explains why a heavier squat may be more beneficial for a counter movement jump. Now, what about this concentric phase? Why does it not? Well, it's not getting near enough positive momentum or upward momentum creation. You're not creating enough motion, meaning you're not putting in enough effort or enough impulse to move that system. So if you consider athletes at different stages in their careers, there is a time where performing squats will increase your muscular strength. And muscular strength should contribute to improved jumping ability. But there is a theorizing here, there is a level of strength that no longer contributes to jumping. Not that you can be too strong, but that you can be stronger than required to jump high. So then what you need are eccentric stimuli. so that you can set the foundation, so that that strength and that transfer of that eccentric storage of energy and so on and so forth can be transferred. So the heavier squat is doing that. So when you have athletes that are no longer jumping higher, it's not because the squat is not effective, it's because the squat is stimulating, assuming you're using a heavy enough load, eccentric or downward momentum stimuli and adaptations. That means the athlete is not adequately taking those stimuli and transferring them to the jump such that you can set the foundation or set the table, but also utilize what you've just said. Now, if I were to summarize this video, I feel as though momentum has a better, well, dare I say, not better. Momentum has more potential to simplify exercise selection, understanding how that exercise and the way you apply that exercise can transfer to other exercises. Because the whole point of movement, exercise, physical performance is to create motion. And that comes down to applying an impulse to create momentum of the system. That's the whole name of the game. Add mass, move faster, combination thereof. If you only consider the fast, you're missing a step. If you're only considering the load, you're missing a step. Put them together and study the momentum. You've now opened the potential for task exercise selection, load identification, and other things that have yet to be thought about. So there it is. Quick 12-minute video, a little longer than I wanted, but sometimes I ramble on, if you know me. Let me know your thoughts on this. Shoot a comment, shoot a hatred, shoot a praise, shoot, hey, what's up? Whatever you want to do. All right, till next time.